When people think of hospice, of course, they naturally think of the great building, wonderful facility, the bricks and mortar, but it really is so much more. It's the people and the programs that really make it so special. And joining me now to speak a little bit more about that, I'd like to welcome to the show now Shannon and Kristen. Welcome back, ladies. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Oh, nice to see you both. And I'll start, first of all, just by introducing you a little bit in your role at hospice. So, Shannon?
Yeah, so I'm Shannon. My role at the hospice is patient and family supportive services coordinator, and I've been working at the hospice since 2018.
Wonderful. Kristen?
And I'm Kristen, and my role is the volunteer and communications supervisor, and I've been here for about 5 years.
That's wonderful. And what can you tell us about some of the programs that make hospice run?
So yeah, it's not just about the residential services we provide. It's a lot more. We have volunteer visiting, and this is where visitors go into the clients' homes, and these visits are about providing friendly company and giving the caregivers time to take a break. And then we have the day program, palliative day program, and that's when these clients can come in for the day and socialize with others going through the same experiences, and have a meal together, activities, go on day trips, and the caregivers can take a day to themselves just to get away and know that their clients are in a safe environment. And also for the caregivers, we have caregiver support, and this is when the caregivers can come in and connect and socialize and focus on self-care.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I'm sure all of those things, having those great volunteers, first of all, that are donating their time and these great programs that they do really helps you in your role, because you're certainly very client focused with the families and the patients at hospice. What can you tell me about the programs that you oversee, Shannon?
Yes, thank goodness for hospice volunteers. They're amazing. On my end of things, I kind of take care of anything that falls under that social work umbrella. So ideally, I get to connect with the patients and families before they ever are admitted to hospice, whether that's offering counseling supports to their caregivers or themselves, because obviously it's a very stressful time in anyone's life to be dealing with illness, anticipatory grief that both the patient and the family members are experiencing. So any counseling types of support, anything involving advanced care planning, so goals of care, discussions, maybe working on completing their powers of attorney, or if a will is needed. Those are the types of supports that I offer before anyone's actually admitted as a patient.
Excellent. And let's talk a little bit about the need for those services and what caused the transition, because we know that hospice and the way it's provided its care has had to evolve to meet the needs of the community. So why the transition to focus more on these community programs?
I think it's more of a transition to focus on not just the person that's sick, but the whole family unit. I think palliative care is just as much focused on the family as it is the person that has the illness. So just understanding the amount of stress and the changing of roles that happens when someone is sick, whether it's kids becoming caregivers for their parents and having to take time away from work. Those are just like small examples of how much their lives are changing at these points. Changing in their health needs and the amounts of supports that they need while the person's still in their home setting. It's a huge amount of stress and ever-changing factors. So that's why these community supports and us getting involved at an earlier time is so important. And it allows us to build more of a connection before they ever actually come as a patient, if that's their journey. Being more familiar with the staff, I think it's just beneficial for everybody.
Absolutely, and as you mentioned, this journey starts from before the patient is admitted, and sometimes they never do end up at hospice. Sometimes they choose to stay in the home, or and that's where they can take advantage of the day program. So maybe take us through that process, right from where your role starts and meeting them in the home, and then the transition if they do enter hospice, and what the experience is like in terms of accessing all these programs.
Yeah, and everybody's journey is different in these situations, right? So after we're first connected with them, the hospice does our assessment and really gets an idea of what the circumstances are, the patient's needs, the family's needs, and hopefully, ideally, they would take part in our community programs as needed, support for the caregivers, the patients themselves, anywhere I can fit in to offer support. And I find even if they don't end up coming to hospice as a patient, as an admission to hospice, it impacts their journey, whatever that works out to be, in a positive way. Just more support is always good.
Absolutely. I think that's a very important point, that more support, you never get enough support, especially in trying times like these. And it's important to note that as much as this, the process starts before admitting to hospice, it continues after as well. The family is not left to their own devices. Once they lose that loved one, you're there to follow up as well.
Absolutely. Yes, a grief and bereavement support, that's a huge part of our community supports as well. So after we've had a loss either of someone that's admitted to hospice, or if they end up passing in the community or in hospital, anybody that's assessed by hospice gets a follow-up to offer those grief supports, just a check-in call to see how they're doing. I think it's always grieving, it's a stigmatized process, right? So just someone to normalize what they're going through and make sure that they're aware of either one-on-one support, or if it's a grief support group that we offer, just for them to mainly be aware that that's available to begin with, and also for them to utilize that if it's ever needed is huge.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned the stigma. And I think, as much as you mentioned normalizing, there's probably not a normal grief cycle. Of course, there's the standard, that maybe feelings that everybody's going to go through, but no person's journey is the same. And I'm sure that some people might think, am I dealing with this the same as everybody else, or am I, is it, maybe you could, offer some words on that, and how everybody's grief journey is certainly different, and they're going to go at their own pace.
Yes, it's such a unique process, and I think that's why so many people wonder if how they're grieving is the right way to do it, even though there is no such thing as a right way to do it. So it's just to normalize that your journey, your path that you're taking is where you need to be, that even the really tough experiences of grieving, you're feeling that way for a reason, there's a purpose to it. So normalizing, that's a huge part of grief support.
Absolutely. And Kristen, I do want to talk a little bit more about the volunteers, though, because certainly you couldn't do all these services without them. As great as the staff is, and I think everybody that works at hospice is just like a superhuman, doing great things, and we'd be lost without them, but certainly we'd be just as lost without those volunteers. So talk to us about the crew that you have.
Yes, the volunteers are a great support for us. Not just in the community programs, but also in the residential part. They're there helping prepare the meals, serve the meals, giving that support to family members, going in and sitting with the patients, taking them outside. If nurses aren't around, they can go in and provide some comfort that someone will be around shortly. And they're the ones that greet you too on the reception. They provide support there as well. So there's gardening.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, and they're a huge impact on our grief supports as well. We have grief kits that the next of kin receives a grief kit with a helpful book and resources. Our volunteers deliver that to people at home. So even if I'm never able to connect by a phone call, they still receive those resources, which is so important.
Oh, that's very important indeed. And time is running out, but quickly, I know we've talked about it in the past throughout the year, looking for volunteers. Do you need volunteers?
Yes, please come. We're always looking for volunteers in all our areas to support our clients and family members.